everybody. Thanks for being here this afternoon. It's a pleasure. My name is Fazzino, and I am the Scholarly Communications Librarian and an Assistant Professor at the College of New Rochelle. And we're going to speak on how to hack the textbook for student success. And this morning, our keynote speaker was speaking about the student having satisfaction and connection to the material that they were using. And that is probably the biggest reason that we decided to hack the textbook so that our students could better relate to it. So I just want to go through, well, I'll give you a little background on our school. It's a small liberal arts college. We have 5 campuses. The main campus is in New Rochelle, but we're spread around the boroughs, Harlem, Brooklyn, the South Bronx. So our students are non-traditional and adult learners, mostly. So there were 6 things that I wanted to go through today, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to learn what an OER is. And I'm wondering, has anyone worked with an open educational resource or gotten requests from their faculty or their students? Great, great. So you guys know what an OER is. And then also learn what the Creative Commons licenses are and how to use them. Also to be able to find a valid OER, which it sounds like most of you have already done some of that. Then how to give proper attribution to an item if you are going to use it. And then the last 2 were things that I was hoping you would take away and walk away with, that you'd be able to read the OER, reuse it, remix it, do whatever the CC license allows you to do. And then hopefully, just like we did, you'll be able to mash up and create your own OER and distribute it and have a new product for your students. So I'm going to start with the definition of what an OER is. An open educational resource can be like any learning object that's free and openly licensed. It can be used for teaching, research, any kind of educational purpose, and it can be anything from a video, a webinar, to a lesson plan, or a syllabus, or a textbook. What's unique about the OERs is that there need to be 5 R's. The first is the ability to retain, so that the user can retain a copy of the material, whether it be a video, that they can archive it, they can use it, they have something that they can retain themselves. The second is the ability to reuse, so that they can take the material and adapt it or distribute it, share it, whether electronically or physically, that is their right, that they're able to do that. The third is revise. That is being able to adapt, edit it, even translate it, so they'll be able to revise it. The fourth is what we did, is the ability to remix. That means that you can combine it with something else, you can combine it with some of your own material, and create a new product, and that's allowable with an OER. The 5th R is the ability to redistribute. So once you have the new object or even the original, that you can just share it freely wherever you go, in your classroom, with colleagues, and there's no restriction on that. So those are the 5 R's that are needed to have an OER. So you might be thinking, well, what about copyright? What has happened to copyright? Copyright still exists, and that's the author's control or the creator's ability to control the integrity of their work. And we'll see the CC licenses sometimes expand on that or are restrictive. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. And the second one, which we can relate to as librarians, is the right to be properly acknowledged and cited. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Creative Commons licensing. And these licenses, they act as a layer on top of the copyright, and the layer can either be more giving or more restrictive. It can give you more rights than a traditional copyright would, or it can even be more restrictive. So there are several types of CC licenses. I'm sure you've seen them all over the internet and maybe not really sure what they might mean. You see them attached to articles, you see them attached to videos or images and photographs. The first one on top is the public domain. There's no copyright whatsoever. It's just freely used. You can do whatever you want with something that's in the public domain. The second one is the attribution alone. So here you see the CC logo, and then you have this icon of a person. So to me, I'm a very visual person. So to me, it's the person wants to be cited to. The person wants credit. They want attribution. So the only thing you need to do with this type of license is make sure that you give an attribution. You can do whatever you want with that item. You can remix it, you can rework it, you can revise it, you can even sell it at a profit. There are no restrictions at all. The only thing that's required is attribution. The next type of license is the attribution share alike. And I see this as an arrow that's going into itself, so to me it reminds me of you have to reuse it or recycle it. This type of license, if you use an item that is attribution share alike, you must, of course, have the attribution, but you must use this same type of license on whatever work you're redoing.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Oh, you don't have to go back, I'm sorry. When you use these different levels, are you using the symbols and a bibliographic citation?
Sometimes yes.
Okay.
Sometimes you're required to.
Okay.
You have to check the attribution, and we can get to that later. It depends. Some people cite and some people use the attribution. It depends. I think you should do both. If you're going to be using an image, for example, you should really use the logo.
Yeah.
And attribute.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. This is the attribution non-commercial. This is pretty evident. It's a dollar sign with a hash through it. So again, you can do whatever you want with the item. You just can't make a profit or sell it in any way. The attribution non-commercial. This is the no derivatives, and we have the equal sign. So to me, I think of equal to, same as. So you can't derive at all from the original work. It has to be used as it is. This is the license that we used because the original text that we worked off of had the same type of license. So it was a CC BY attribution, non-commercial. We were trying to provide a free text for our students and share alike. We had no problem in making sure that we use the same type of license. Can you guys guess what this one is?
No derivative.
Yeah. It's an attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives. So here are some of the sites. I'm not going to go too in depth. I've given you a handout with a listing of them. We have on the left here is the SUNY Open OERs. They have a lot of great text there. BC campus is from British Columbia, Canada. We have the Rice University down here at the bottom with the checks. And they're really good quality items on these websites. Some are created by faculty, some are peer reviewed by faculty. So if you start working off of that list, you'll be able to find some good quality items. So this is the InfoLit guide that we use. SUNY is a state university in New York. And we started using this maybe a year ago for our students. And we said, why don't we have a free textbook, because we have a 2-credit bearing course for our students. And that went really well. But then we thought, well, why don't we expand on it? They don't use the framework for information literacy. They use the pillars, the 7 pillars, and that seemed to work well with our curriculum. But if we look at their licensing, it's an attribution, no commercial share alike. So we could see that we can do whatever we want and redistribute. So we decided to do that and make it very specific to our students. So each of us took like 1 or 2 chapters and reworked them. I did the chapter on presentation. So I was able to incorporate really specific information from our university. One of our professors does a poster session every year, so I included that in the textbook. We're also starting an online peer-reviewed journal. I also included that in the text because the students could be contributors. The presentation chapter is all about the student as creator of content. So that worked really well for us.
It's 1:40 now.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to quickly go through this. So this is the first iteration. This is the second iteration. Here is the publication in our repository. You can see the Creative Commons licenses there. And in the highlighted, it said, feel free to remix and adapt in accordance with that license. So I've made sure to include that language. There's an attribution for Creative Commons. There's a best practices site that's also on your handout. I was nervous, so I actually emailed one of the editors of the books. And so this is our citation, and you can see that it's a derivative of, and the original is listed, and then a citation for our text is also there. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues, and they'll talk about their experience in the classroom with it.
I hope this, can you hear me? Yeah. All right, good. My name is Octobre, and as my colleague said, we're going to share with you why Remix, my portion part about hacking the textbook. And before I begin, I want to share with you, sorry, I'm Peter today. It went too far. Okay. I just want to stay on this line for a second so I can share with you about the why remix part. And I want to let you know that, as Lucy mentioned, OERs, they're not just free, but they are out there for everyone. Librarian, faculty to remix. And as we said before, who's best to remix a resource but the person, you, the instructor who's going to use it. You can remix it or remodify it based upon your requirements. Now, some states and colleges now support open educational resources, but meanwhile, what else can you do locally at your school or at the grassroots in your own community? So this is what the Librarians Department Rochelle did. After using many other resources for the credit bearing and information literacy course, they decided to remix their own. And as we showed you, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's already out there for you to reuse, okay? So, and you can remix it for your specific student population. Now, what I would like to also share with you is, before I go further, besides in terms of open educational resources, they are available in PDF. You could read them online. And in terms of, what you call it, AD, American Disability Act, it says, this is from Bookshare. Bookshare said that open educational resources are more available in more formats than traditional textbooks. And they're so across various devices, because nowadays everybody either has a tablet, either whether it's an iPad or an Apple one or a Samsung or LG, whichever. So they said that they are better than traditional textbook, and of course they are accessible across various devices to better serve the population with disabilities. And Bookshare also has they said different rules for membership for individuals versus organizations, but it's free for some students, and also they charge an annual fee of $50 if you're one organization. Now, but I'd like to share this slide with you, besides this one I just shared. Oh, wrong way. Now, if you look at the orange area, where it says it is 58.1%, I'd like to raise my hand and say I was one of the 58.1% about a couple of years ago, but now I'm slowly moving, not in the totally aware area yet, but I'm getting there, okay? And as I said, most of you are here, so we're not, all of us are in here, we're not in the 58.1% anymore. We're in the very aware percentage part. Now, which way this goes? Okay, no, the other way. And the reason is because to have open educational resources, if you notice the area of the aware, It's in terms of arts and literature is very low, but in terms of mathematics and in terms of computer and computer science, they're in a higher percentage area, 10% and 13%. And I'd like to share with you one anecdote from the Bermuda principal. A couple of years ago, approximately 21 years ago, 1990s if I got my math right, a group of scientists got together to work on the Genome project. And when they were working on it, they said, what are we going to do with all this information? Are we going to sell it? Or are we going to just let it for free? And they decided to let it free. So that's why I said on my Bruce Babson chart that science areas are a bit high because they're giving out there free for anyone to reuse. While other areas, especially in social science, are a little bit very low, okay? Now, as I said, the awareness in terms of, sorry, I keep forgetting which way to go. If you notice, I said before, in the science area, it's very high. So we now know if we are interested in starting open education resources, what areas that more are needed in, okay, the social science areas. And also another reason is because if you notice over here, the little yellow line, since 2005 to 2006 up to the present, this is the growing cost of college textbook to students. And they said that when students have the choice and they can't afford the book, they rather use an older edition. And I'm sure most of you know that that is not going to help a student succeed if they're using an older edition of a class textbook. So they said that creates a barrier between the students and faculty or in the class of an older edition, and you can't really follow. Remember, pages change with each edition. So Harris said that students realize that textbooks are going to add a derivative cost of their courses. So when they have the option of either choosing a class that has an open educational resource versus one that has an open, a regular textbook of $100, $200, they more likely will take the class that has an open educational resource. So I was thinking that is also very useful for some students when they reflect on how much they can save if they use an open educational resource. So I was thinking this might boost up maybe enrollment, and also especially some graduate students who may not have financial aid. So that's one factor of why Remix. You are helping your students succeed. Wrong way. Good. Now, what's important, if you notice that chart over there, it's telling you for students, cost is a big factor. Whether they're going to take that class, it has a book that costs a lot of money. So they would decide, based upon research, they said that also by the time students get their textbook, they're behind and might drop the course. And also students, they say are more likely to stay in a class if they have an open educational resource and not drop out. So, and they say at community colleges, the price of textbook can be half the price of a student pays for their education. And that's not only community, that's in all colleges, okay, everywhere. So, and they also said that, and from Fisher, he said that they can easily spend $1,000 a year on textbooks in general. So that's why cost is a big factor for students. And not only because of that, for students, when you think about the faculty also, our textbook, the one that we have, has some quizzes inside it and has exams. It would be like a starting off point for the instructor. Now, there's been endeavors to increase open educational resources, but this one was from the federal level, and it did get enacted. But on the state level, there's been several. The ones that sit over there are from Connecticut and Maryland and Texas, which is in process, Texas, but the other states have. And the last one is from California. If you notice, it says 180 million have been given for community colleges to work on the open resources. That's from Dobson. So money is out there to create open educational resources. But when you also think about educational resources, there's other barriers that is with every technology that students have to think about. The various devices, I mentioned there's several of them. And do they own them? And are they compatible? And the resources, as I mentioned, are they ADA optimized? And then we all know we've been sitting at a computer waiting for students to download. So there's the issue also of bandwidth. And not only the student has an issue in terms of open educational resources, the faculty is where are you going to find these things? As Lucy mentioned before, she gave you some websites that you can, as a starting off point. And on the Kahn and Rochelle website, there's a link that have been created on LibGuide for faculty to go to, at least to start seeing what is out there for them to use. And once you find these things I mentioned before, in terms of remixing, you could not only have, oops, sorry, microphone, can't move too far. You can use either download the item, you can have it in PDF, and you could read it online. So you have different points of access. And then are they free? We know they are free because they are open educational resources.
It's, you have like 1 minute.
Oh, okay. So now evaluating, let me just say that I volunteered to peer review with Masuni. So that's one last thing to be worried about in terms of the authority of these open educational resources. Now, this is that from Harrison, that faculty members sometimes were unaware of the state laws are encouraging to participate in efforts to reduce textbook costs, and that many did not understand how their decisions and priorities when selecting the textbook would affect student costs. So that's very important when you start thinking about how educational resources, open educational resources benefits your student. One anecdote I want to share with you said that one faculty was recommended because he told his student to use an open educational resource. And that book, if they use it, would cost $180. And that book was written by his department chair. So this, that's one of the things that you have to think about when you are thinking about using an open educational resource. Now, in terms of where to, he said that there's a problem in terms of nobody wants to take responsibility. As I said, all of us are inside here, we are going to take responsibility. Now, this is the statistics for our open educational resources. Remember I said grassroots, local, community, and all that? These are the statistics taken this year, 2016-17. And if you notice, with the yellow area within the U.S., in terms of statistics, and our statistics, if I go back for a second, you could see how they changed from 230 to 239, and from 160 to 183. So our statistics for the open educational resource created by the Kahn and Rochelle has been growing, and as I said, global. If you look at the other numbers for the other countries, it is increasing, okay? And still?
It's 153.
Good. Now, local, as I said before, Canada, these are the places that are using open educational resource created by Kahn and Rochelle. And as I say, has gone international in terms of Japan. So you are not creating for just your community here. You are creating for the global community out there that maybe cannot afford to buy a college textbook. And Portugal, and also not just, what you call it, let's say colleges and schools like Drexel, Berkeley, CUNY, Department of Education, all of these have been downloading the Kahn and Rochelle open textbook, okay? So now, and also, there's been an endeavor by there's about 13 states that are not offering open educational resource degrees. So that means there is a need out there for open education, educational resources. And, I didn't want to use this slide. No. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And one last thing I want to share with you is, if I missed my slide, I wanted to ask you, yes, this is that question over there, what can you do in your own local community? And, here it is. This is from Harris. Harris said that open educational resources has a positive benefit. Open source textbooks will allow more students to go to college and, as we know this morning, to be successful and become productive professionals. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia Sucre, and I'm also a Learning Commons librarian at the College of New Rochelle. I am part of one of the city branches. My campus is the South Bronx, and I was also part of this team. So my colleague, Marie Octobre, just gave us a very eloquent arguments, various eloquent arguments for why use OERs, why remix in broad terms. I'm going to focus today more on the impact of revising, remixing on pedagogy, on my experience, how it changed my teaching in some ways, and how I feel it changed my students' learning, or has potential for that. So these are the questions that I was pondering in reflecting about this experience and reflecting about what we did together in revising, remixing this OER. And I ended up with some surprising answers that's what I'm going to share with you today. So first of all, this revising, remixing thing, I kept on saying revising, remixing, revising, remixing. It's a very unwieldy phrase, right? Because, and I kind of felt like I wasn't sure what I was doing, and our textbook, our modified textbook, is a remix, right? As a noun, right? But and that's in the title. It's a remix and it's a derivative. But it involved both revising and remixing. And I think that the distinction is important between the two, because it allows us to see retrospectively more clearly what we were doing, and it gives us more direction. So I want to talk a little bit more about the revise and remix. And I'm sticking with revising / remixing. Okay, so the revise, remix are part of the 2 R's, right? So they're distinct in OER talk. But the distinction, as I said, I found made sense. And I think the general definitions, the general usage of the words, help clarify the meaning. So revise, we can see, is sort of text-based, right? It's to prepare a newly edited version of a text, in parentheses. Maybe not only of a text, but mostly of a text. And remix comes from, originally from audio. And sort of, we've also extended it to multimedia. So I think that's one of the distinctions between revising and remixing. And my colleague Julie Turley is going to elaborate on that a lot more later. And also, I would just emphasize, looking at these definitions a little liberally, that revise is sort of a flat intervention, and remix is 3-dimensional. Revise is focusing on the details of whatever, of any media, of the text, but also of any media. And remix is, right, the combining 2 or more. It's looking at the big picture, seeing how the text relates to other sources and other media. So that led me to see the phrase revise / remix as sort of a continuum. And that's something that I will be looking at more when we continue to revise this text. So another part of remixing is evaluation, and my colleagues have already talked about that, is deciding, what to remix, right? And we have guidelines, we have various tools to support us in that. As educators, I think it's important to point out that there are tools for K-12 teachers as well as for the college level. But what is not as usual is finding a criteria that talk about the content of revising and remixing, sort of guidelines for revising and remixing. And so now I want to turn to our experience doing that, to sort of take a stab at sketching some of the criteria that you need to keep in mind based on our experience. So these are the questions that I think you need to keep in mind. It's very important. We taught with this textbook for, for a semester, I think, just a semester before we revised it. And that was a very important experience because we could see what worked, what didn't work. Then the next two questions I think are related. It's very important to know what is the real reason you chose this textbook, because that will let you decide whether you're doing it alone or as a group, what parts to maintain consistently throughout the textbook and what parts are open for modification. So in our case, we all really appreciated this book because it was very practical. It was very much what our students needed in that sense. And one of the ways it was practical is that it includes information-seeking scenarios at the beginning of each chapter. So we decided not to touch that framework throughout, even though in some cases it might have made it shorter, etc. We decided not to touch that, but the content of those scenarios was something that we could touch. Then copy editing, that's always important, and you'll probably find English majors among your staff that would help you with that. The last question, potential clashes with your current curriculum. This is about also not only modifying the text, but also how you use the text. In our case, we had sort of 3 different theoretical frameworks. The 7 pillars, which was what the information literacy guide used. We had, our course was very much based on the ACRL 2000 standards, as many information literacy courses have been in the past. And then we were very aware of the new 2016 ACRL framework for information literacy, and that was also included to some extent in the Credo modules that was another component of our class. So we left each of us, we didn't impose any systematic theory. We didn't revise the theory in any systematic way. Each of us sort of was left to navigate that mix ourselves. So this leads to the most important question: how does the revised remix model impact pedagogy? I felt that it was, I had a really interesting experience with this, which is, I did several things to try to teach with the framework, but this was something that just happened because of the remix model. And it's just an anecdote, but it's led to more things. The anecdote is that I had a student mid-semester who said all of a sudden to me, I didn't realize this is your book. You're an author, congratulations. And I felt kind of embarrassed because I thought I was misleading students by having them think that I was an author on the basis of this book when it was just a remix. And then I started thinking of all the theoretical frameworks, right? So what is an author? Is remixing authorship? What is authority, right? It's constructed, it's contextual. And this, it led to an interesting conversation in class, and it also led to the birth of a project, which is what I'm working on now, which is, and connects to another problem that I've had and that in teaching this class, which is that when I look for video tutorials on different research information literacy topics, I often don't find tutorials that are really inclusive of the student population I work with, or representative of them. And I find that very, very problematic. So my idea is to have students produce, have an option as a final project to produce video tutorials on a research information literacy concept and include them in our OER. So this is not, it's obviously, I mean, I know that we often have students teach to students, right? It's not a new practice, obviously. But my point is that the OER framework really really provides a real life production framework. And also that this would address a real life need in terms of materials, educational materials that are needed. So that is how I feel that that remixing is so important. So why revise, remix rather than create your own OER textbook? Right, it's about not inventing the wheel, but I think it's also about more important, more complex reasons related to the textbook. I think that the remixing and revising really allow us to address the textbook authority issues and really explore a new form of authorship. So that's the thought that I would like to leave you with, and I would love to, those of you who have experience with OERs you mentioned and with remixing, to hear about how the issue of authorship, how you approach the issue of whether remix is authorship, or if that came up in any way in your experience. Thank you. Go ahead.
It works.
Yes, that is, yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Michael Kahn, Learning Commons librarian at the College of New Rochelle's Brooklyn campus in neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant. I want to thank everybody for coming, taking out the time, the interest to be here today. I want to thank all my colleagues for collaborating on this project. Took a lot of time. I want to thank Martha for being behind this whole conference today. Natalia told me about how, reminded me today, how the keynote mentioned talking about one topic, right? That's what they spoke about. So I'm going to talk about one word, relevance, right? It's already up there, so I guess you saw it already. Before we start, I want to do quick, if everybody could think, I'm calling 3 people and I got only 10 minutes, so. If everybody could think of, if I told you I'm going to give you $50 to go to Barnes & Nobles and buy a book, think of one emotion, one word that you would feel. Take a second and we'll call in 3 people.
Joy.
Joy, okay. Someone in the middle. Anyone want to volunteer? Anyone emotional here? Well, lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, over here, Martha.
Consternation over what I was going to buy.
All right, now imagine, one more time, then I'll move on. Imagine, I told, one word emotion. Giving everybody $50 here to go to Barnes & Noble. When we get there, I'm going to pick the book that I'm interested in. Okay, you have a word?
Disappointment.
Disappointment.
Frustration.
Frustration?
Upset.
What was it?
Upset.
We don't have time to talk about this now, but I'm just wondering how our students feel when we tell them what textbook to read. And we could go back and have a conversation about remembering how we felt when we read textbooks. But, so let's get into relevance, and maybe we could look at how the word students come into their mind at the end. So, on the left side we have the Informational Literacy User's Guide. Lucy pointed it out, other people, my colleagues have been pointing out, that was originally the textbook we started with. I'm sure many of you heard of Trudy Jacobson. She was one of the editors. She actually spoke at this conference a few years ago. The words that she used was, with the framework I'm talking about, she called it old wine and new vats and new bottles, something like that. And we can talk about old wine and new bottles. So this is the textbook that we went. And I want to talk about how relevance is what drove me to move to that textbook to work together with everybody else. So, learning, relevance is how we learn. Everybody's familiar with Gardner, multiple learning theories, right? You can't be a librarian or a professor and not know that. Relevance has to do with how we learn also, right? Nobody wants to read the textbook that I get to choose or the book that I get to choose, but you want to pick the books, right? So we're going in all these different directions when we're learning, right? Well, relevance is how we learn. Robertson, she's a professor now out, Robin Robertson. She's out in Oklahoma, I think it's Central State University. She talks about the perception that something is interesting and worth knowing is what relevance is, right? I'll leave that for a second. The search for relevance is a basic feature of human cognition, thinking, and I think it's a basic feature of life, right? I had a physical therapist. I asked him, how did you become a physical therapist? He told me, well, he broke his back, right? This is for real, I'm not making this up. And it wasn't long ago, he said he broke his back, he went to a physical therapist, and he started finding it interesting because it related to him, you know, and he could identify with it. Raise your hand if you're a librarian. Are we all librarians here? Yeah. Anyone who's a professor or an instructor? Okay. How many of you like, all right, raise your hand if you like reading. Right? I wonder why we all picked this job. Well, learning, reading, books, scholarly journal articles, writing. Who likes coming to conferences, by the way? Everyone enjoy those? I like them, right? I assume we all like them, right? That's why we picked it. This job is relevant for us, all right? So, one-size textbook doesn't fit all. Because if relevance is how we learn, well, everybody has something different in this room. Everyone in this room has something different that is relevant to them, right? We might all like reading and books and articles, but we might not all like reading the same thing. Even librarians, we're all here for information literacy, but some people like the standard stuff. Some people like the framework. We can fight about that, right? Same thing with textbooks. You can't write a textbook. There's been a big debate. A lot of textbooks in Texas are written for, Texas is the biggest state, and they have to be approved for them, and then it doesn't fit other places. So I want to talk about if relevant textbooks are how our students learn. So this is the textbook, the SUNY textbook. It gives an example where there's an informational need, right? The first thing you need when you learn, do research. Harry and Sally, you must have picked it from the movie, right? Harry and Sally Dennis have lived in central New York State for 25 years. Trudy Jacobs, she actually is in SUNY Albany, and most of the people that wrote that textbook are somewhat connected to SUNY Albany or other SUNY mid-New York State. Okay, what's their need? Well, fracking, right? Big need, they're concerned with fracking. Okay, makes sense if you lived in central New York. I don't know, Connecticut, you got fracking?
Not much.
Okay, so it wouldn't fit for Connecticut. And their informational need is she wants to run for office, she wants to, what do you call it, get involved in the fracking debate. But I live in Brooklyn, right? I drive to Bed-Stuy, never saw an oil rig so far, right? It's not relevant for my students, right? It's a great textbook, we love to use it for a year. But if you're living in Bed-Stuy, anyone here, well, you don't live in Bed-Stuy, but has your rent ever gone up? Right? That's the thing that relates to people. Why does the rent go up in the inner cities? There's one word that begins with a G. That's a major cause for the rent going up.
Gentrification.
Gentrification. And if we're working with our students, librarians, instructors, we know what our students are writing their papers with, especially librarians, because they're coming to us. They're saying, I got to write a paper on whatever, I need 3 sources, they have to be an APA, and they have this scholarly thing. Well, we can show them the databases, JSTOR, EBSCO, right? APA, MLA. We know what they find relevant. So imagine if instead of Harry and Sally in central New York, I could have a book that talks about Pedro. Actually, I had a student named Pedro, who lives in Bed-Stuy. And imagine if instead of worrying about Frankie, Pedro's worried about the rent due to gentrification. And Pedro wants to go to a conference, well, a hearing that the mayor is holding. He wants to be able to talk about gentrification. All right? If you were Pedro, which one would you want to read? All right? So, not only would I love to have that, but because of the work that I did with my colleagues, we do have that. That is one of the scenarios that we have in our textbook. I came up with this one. Other colleagues came up with their own that they felt were relevant. This is getting back to that one word. An OER textbook can make it relevant. There are many great things we've been talking about. This is what motivated me to push for this together with my colleagues. So, another thing, and I don't think this is as important, is you know how there's a certain manualization in information literacy textbooks, pictures of catalogs, library catalogs, pictures of databases, all that type of stuff, right? But they're usually generic. They're not your college's database, not your college's library homepage. You can customize it, and then again, it makes it more relevant. So, what can you do to make your textbook more relevant? I think we can walk away, hopefully today, with an OER equation. OER textbooks, when you customize them, equals increased relevancy, because they relate to you. I can't have an individualized textbook for every student. That would take a lot of work. But, as customized as humanly possible, ends up with increased learning. And we've actually been talking among my colleagues, they want to continue making the book even better. So what would it be helpful for you as librarians, instructors, or to work like between librarians and instructors in your institution to modify open educational resource textbooks? And if it would be helpful, what would be the best way for you to do that? That's a question I want you to come away with hopefully today. Start that cognitive process, start that conversation. And that is the power of OER. Thank you.
Hello, I'm the last one. I want to make sure we have a little time for questions, so I'm going to just power through my slides. You've gotten a very full picture. You can see now why collaborating on this one textbook with these colleagues was such a pleasure. Just really great colleagues to work with. I'm very proud that they had me along on this. So basically, my name is Turley. I'm at the Harlem campus of the College of New Rochelle. So I want to talk about what I did wrong and missed opportunities, and the fact that that's okay in the OER world, okay? Nothing is ever set in stone. It's an ongoing learning experience. I wanted, at an OER conference I attended a couple of months ago at Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, one of the librarians talked about blowing up the textbook. And I went back and asked her about this. Who came up with that term? She goes, I don't know, just use it. So it was a very OER thing. I wanted to think more about how I could have blown up the textbook. I certainly didn't do that. Do you recognize this image? It's from a 1966 film by Antonioni called Blow Up. It's set in swinging London. It's a really exciting film, very youthful, very energetic. And so I just wanted to sort of keep that in mind. I thought it was a cogent image for my discussion today. Also, I had to mention, it's June 16th. What is that, literary types? June 16th. What's June 16th in the world of English literature?
The Ides.
What?
The Ides, or the 15th.
That's March 15th. June 16th, can you see the placard? Today's Bloom's Day. Happy Bloom's Day, everybody. So June 16th is the day on which the entire novel of Ulysses, James Joyce's magnum opus, is set. He's certainly blew up narrative, right? He's really great inspiration for radically rethinking textbooks and how to present information to students. So I just had to slide that in once I had to make a slide for that. So just inspiration, thinking outside the box, drawing from disciplines outside of librarianship or information literacy in particular. And as you've seen, this is a huge, huge field, and it's rapidly developing and changing, and we are just scratching the surface here. Okay, so this is just to give you a taste. We know a lot more than we did when we started, but we're still not the authority on at least I'm not the authority on OER. So radical remixing, some of this will look familiar to you already from what my colleagues have said. Adding visuals and pictures with the licensing in mind, or using Wikimedia Commons with a lot of Wikimedia Commons images require attribution. Create and add your own graphics and pictures. There are a million different apps to do that with. Add already existing YouTube videos into your content. Create and add your videos, slideshows using Camtasia, Animoto. That's a free method of making your own video. Make a meme. Have your students make a meme. Engage students in remixing activities, as Natalia mentioned. What would they like to see in their own textbooks? There are boundless options, very exciting opportunities in the world of OER. So what did I do? I knew almost nothing about it. I just sort of jumped in, which is what you can do. I was very timid. When handed my chapter. I sort of regarded the words of the SUNY authors, the SUNY collaborators, as sort of sacred. It was really scary for me to try and cut into a text that already existed. I was very nervous about it. So what did my remix chapter look like? This. That's all I did. I just copy edited it. I just sort of, I reworded things, tried to make things more clear, or cut it down so it was leaner. Thought about my class that I teach. I teach a very active learning, a very lab-based class, and so I thought of my chapter as just something, an outside resource. It's not completely integral. They don't absolutely have to have it, but it's something that they can use to back up some of the things we do in class. So it was just a copy editing job, really, and probably not that great of a one. So again, sort of thinking metaphors of blowing up, inspiration for blowing up. We were actually talking about doing this again now that we know more, and actually working towards more of a radical remixing. And then also achieving balance. As one of my colleagues mentioned, sometimes the scenarios that were intact in each of our chapters were really the best version. I couldn't find anything in my chapter, for instance, that was more relevant, that could replace what was already there. So I just left it, and that's okay too. I just wanted to throw out some examples of institutions that are doing really interesting work. The MIT OpenCourseWare has lots of online textbooks by department that might be worth your perusal. I liked this one a lot. Speaking of relevance, this is a Rice University textbook using for sociology, using an example of Jimmy Buffett fans. Where is Rice University? Houston. Okay, so that's south, tropical. It's not, So I thought that was an interesting example of relevance. And then this is the Daring Librarian. She does a lot of really interesting work of remixing, mashup. She's a school librarian, so her whole orientation is a little bit different than what we have in academic libraries, but her work is really worth taking a look at, and you can see her website, thedaringlibrarian.com. So I'm very fascinated by what she's doing, and she questions the whole idea of having a textbook at all. So Anyway, that's basically mine, and I'm excited to sort of jump back in and start to really do a proper remix this time. So any questions for anyone on the panel?
Just so you all know, this session will be available on video online, probably by the end of the summer, as well as their slide presentations. So you can go back, you don't have to worry about having lost notes.
Thank you. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. How many different OER textbooks did you look at before you chose the SUNY Albany one?
I think only this one, because I don't think at that time there were any other information literacy books out there. I'm not sure if that's changed, but at that time that was the only one that was available.
It's a pretty famous one,
Yeah.
at least in New York at that point.
And I forget, you said it was standards-based and not framework-based, is that correct?
It's 7
based on the
pillars.
7 pillars.
7 pillars, is that a New York thing?
UK.
No, that's, yeah, it's UK and Ireland. And
Okay,
it's sort of an architectural model.
okay, thank you.
So are any faculty members using OERs on your campuses? And, you know, have you served as guides in their remixing efforts?
We had at our campus about a year ago, a workshop on open education resource for faculty, and students and staff were invited to it, so I was hoping there were some students here today. But what happened when that teacher, about a few months later, she teaches psychology. She found an open education resource psychology, and she's using it for her class.
We were sitting together at a campus meeting, and when the campus director asked us what we wanted to report, I told her, you know, we can make something called OERs, and your students won't have to pay any money for their textbooks. And he said, that's great, I want every single course to have one. Their OERs, it's complicated, not necessarily every professor, instructor wants to give up the textbook that they use. I was at ACRL recently, and there was a poster called OER, what do you do when the bookstore doesn't like it? It's a complicated process. I know CUNY in New York City is doing it, and they're paying their professors to work with librarians. I think we've talked about this, and the idea is basically to pick one instructor or professor at a time, have them like it, and spread the positive feelings about it.
Right.
And from my research, there are some schools that are, they have funding to create open educational resources. They're giving the teachers time to go and do that. Time.
You might be familiar with the new Excelsior, tuition-free in New York, SUNY and CUNY's tuition. They've, I think, allotted $8 million for OERs. And I think Oregon also has huge funding for OERs.
The OpenStax has a partnership program that you can apply to as well to start to provide grants, I believe, or something to that effect.
They help you develop a strategic plan to promote it. We actually just got accepted. Very excited. University of Hartford. So it just became public, so now I can like tell people. Yeah, so they work with you for a year to help, and then you become a part of the community of other past institutional partners who've been through the program and just share advice.
We applied to.
Oh, yeah.
It's very in-depth because, for example, in SUNY, Open SUNY, you can put in an ISBN number of a book that you like and find if they have a similar book that's OER. So, you know, it goes, and Lucy's the scholarly communications librarian, and I used to see scholarly communications librarians just, you know, in charge of these things. So it keeps going. It's pretty deep. I don't even know a lot of it.
I'm just curious what the biggest challenge you faced so far using OER? If it's just like a certain subject that maybe there's not a lot of stuff out there for yet, or
Our faculty haven't adopted OERs in general. We just redid ours for information literacy. So so I think initially just getting buy-in from the faculty, but like Michael said, if you can just get like one or two that you can work with that are very interested, then let them spread the wealth kind of a thing, instead of trying to proselytize, and saying, this is really great, and just, also the students, letting the students know, then they get up in arms and saying, well, these things are free, why can't we use them,
Yeah, and I think that that's also why it's important for librarians to do it in any courses that you're teaching, because the students experience it, and then and we have control over being able to do it, and then it gets the word spreads. Yeah.
Natalia spoke a lot about authorship. I think as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, you could play to the aspect of let me help you become an author. And I think that would go. And, seriously, but, let me help you do your first book here. And, I think that might work. So we'd love to hear back how it goes by you.
I just wanted to state about the authority as constructed. I teach the information literacy class online, and I have had so many students leave the class, unfortunately, no matter how much I say, believing that the scholarship is where professors make the most amount of money. They don't understand that all publishing is
interesting. Yeah.
And it wouldn't matter if I preached it till the cows come home, they still don't quite understand that it's the publishers who make the money and not necessarily, usually not the professors or the authors. So it also contributes to the scholarship as conversation framework, threshold concept.
Which is why I also mentioned as a starting off point, because Rochelle does have a LibGuide pointing to, is a starting point where you can find really Google educational resources. So you can share, depending on your college, how it works, so you can start off. Because how would you advertise when you start your OER? What would you do?
Well, I created a LibGuide that we're starting to promote more, but I'm hoping that when we start meeting with the open science people, they'll tell us how to really get it out there. But going to department meetings and meeting with faculty one-on-one.
Because if you notice the statistics, somehow on the internet, we were talking about it, when you do a Google search, you will pick up our textbook. And keep in mind also, other countries out there are going to be reading, they're going to be looking for your book.
Yes, so thank you for coming. It's past 2:30. I think we're out of time, but appreciate you coming, guys.
Thank you very much.